Yeah.
All right, so how shall we start? Maybe start with, if you could, the optimal, what you see to be the optimal way to raise a child for maximum positive outcomes, a very young child.
Well, what I say is more is more. The more emotionally and physically present you can be for your children in the first critical period of brain development, which is 0 to 3, the greater the chance your child will be mentally healthy. And having a primary attachment figure, because attachment security is really what we're talking about. So having a primary attachment figure available to you to soothe you when you're in distress and help bring you back to that homeostasis whenever you need it. As you're starting to explore the world, to be able to come and touch base with that, secure object and be able to then go off and toddle and explore again. That's the ideal. And I think it's hard because, we're not allowed to talk about the ideal today in anything. I don't know when that happened because, if things are less than ideal, often they're easier to deal with if first we understand what the ideal is, right? So if we can't talk about the ideal, we can't repair, we can't work through and resolve the conflicts that come from the less than the ideal. So the ideal is having your primary attachment figure, usually your mother, as present as possible in those, but not just physically present, because as I say, you can be physically present and be emotionally checked out. You can't be emotionally present if you're not physically present. It's just not happening. So the idea of quality time is a ruse. It's a myth. It doesn't work for children. They need both your physical presence and your emotional presence. That's the ideal. If you can't be there,
I want to
sure.
Actually sit with the ideal for a moment more, because I agree with you. It's not talked about enough.
No.
In some circles, it is talked about. Stay-at-home mom in the context of the ideal for child rearing. It's like stay-at-home mom is the best. Okay, well, what does that mean? How does that mean? What does it mean to be the ideal stay-at-home mom for your kids? What do those activities look like? So I want to unpack that a little more.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned quality and quantity time. There's a difference between the two. As you said, I think in your book, children need both.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's start with the quantity word, because I think that's the most sticky for people.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I don't know if it's 144 hours in a week,
mm-hmm.
if I have that number correct.
Mm-hmm.
Waking hours for a child is, I don't know if it's 80.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember doing this exercise, by the way, I think after reading your book. Quantity. So for that mother, when you say the more is more, is it ideal then for a mother, if she has activities outside the home, even grocery shopping, okay, we're just doing the ideal exercise here, or she has friends, or she has, she works out, she does, whatever those activities are, is the ideal the child accompanies for all of it during waking hours?
Well, again, if you look at other parts of the world, mothers wear their babies. It's baby wearing for the first year. And so ideal would be that you wear your baby and you carry your baby with you and your baby goes with you. There was a researcher that I interviewed for my book. Her name is Judy Mesman, and she's a very famous researcher. She goes around the world and she looks at mothering behaviors in other cultures to see if it's culturally relevant or whether it's universal. And she found in all the countries she went to, many, many, many countries, that it's universal. Mothering behavior is universal. But what she found is that babies in other parts of the world don't cry like babies in the West do, particularly in America, because we have this very strange and perverse idea that babies should be separate than us at a very young age, whereas in other cultures, they understand that infants that are just out of your body are meant to be physically skin-to-skin close to you, because that forms attachment security. So the ideal is for the first year, for the most part, to have your baby with you. Right? And then, it doesn't mean every single minute, because the other thing that we don't do in this country is we don't raise our children in extended family situations like other parts of the world. Now, that's changing in other parts of the world, sadly, because they're following our model, and they really shouldn't, because our model sucks, excuse me. But we have this kind of family diaspora where people move away from their families and they raise children in isolation. They move to the suburbs, they raise children in isolation. It's all about isolation. So this weird kind of ethos of individualism and isolation and self-sufficiency, and it's all part of our, I suppose it's part of our American culture, not the good part. I love America, but this is not the good part of our American culture, this idea that we're all meant to live independently of one another. Actually, no, because independence is not the goal. It's interdependence. And that means that we never raise children in isolation. We always raise children with grandmothers and aunts and next door neighbors who were called aunt. And so those people could hold the baby, because that you asked about alloparenting. Alloparenting is not giving your baby to someone when they're in distress and, going out and, to the supermarket at that moment. It's giving your baby to someone who the baby knows really well, who's an alternative attachment figure, who can entertain the baby and hold the baby when the baby is in a state of homeostasis. But when the baby is in distress in other parts of the world, the baby is handed right back to the mother.
And is the mother not gone long
enough?
The
mother's not gone that long. And so,
And how long is not long?
So it depends on the baby, right? If you have a sensitive baby who really can't bear, who cries when the baby is away from you, then, you have a sensitive baby and you have to be more present. If you have a slightly less sensitive baby, and that's the individual baby God gave you, then you might be able to leave for a few more minutes, And the idea is that if you have trusted alternative attachment figures like grandmothers or a single surrogate like a babysitter, it is also important for mothers to have breaks. So this is, the other thing is that it's important for mothers to be able to take a shower, to be able to go for a walk, to be able to do a 20-minute yoga class by themselves, to be able to just not be within the sphere of the baby for a few minutes, And so that's important too. But somehow we've taken that idea of, the dance of closeness and space with a newborn baby, and we've taken it to an extreme, because don't we do everything to an extreme in America? And we've taken it to an extreme where we say, well, I can go back to work for 8 or 10 hours a day or leave my baby in daycare. And no, it sort of loses the nuance of it. So think about closeness and separation and space as a dance. And with a newborn baby, I would say there's more closeness than space. And then as the baby gets older, increasingly there's a little more space, but there's still closeness.